So recently I've been reading this textbook called Cognitive Behavior Therapy Basics and Beyond. It's written for clinicians, and a lot of the text is written to instruct clinicians in their practice of helping clients understand their mental and behavioral processes. But I find that a lot of this information can be pretty usefully self-applied, which is to say you can take a lot of this information and use it to analyze your own behavior, cognition, and moods. So it has a lot of interesting and helpful information even if you're not a clinician, and a lot of this info is useful even if you don't meet the criteria or thresholds for a mental disorder like depression. One of the most interesting concepts it covers is this technique of behavioral activation and activity scheduling. So I just wanted to make a video talking about it and some of the rationale and background information behind it. Now to begin, before I get into behavioral activation, I want to explain the general foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy. You might have seen this triangle before, but it's important to stress that CBT is based on the idea that thoughts, emotions, and behaviors all influence each other. This is an important concept that I feel that a lot of people often gloss over without really thinking about it, and I want to emphasize something. A lot of people, including myself, sometimes have this thought process where we tell ourselves in improper circumstances that we will do something difficult when we are in a better mood. We say we will perform a behavior when in a better mood instead of trying to change our mood through behavior. CBT suggests that behavior can modify mood. In the specific case of behavioral activation, behaviors are modified to modify mood and cognition. There are also additional techniques that help with behavioral activation that work to alter thoughts and emotions, and I'll discuss that later. So what is behavioral activation? It's a process of getting more active and involved in life by doing activities that have potential to improve your mood. Hand in hand with this is the concept of activity scheduling, which is when you schedule these activities and then actually follow through by doing them. But there's a bit more to it. Behavioral activation is based on the fact that one of the worst ways to kill your mood is to disengage or withdraw from activities that have given you a sense of achievement, control, pleasure, or connection, and that have lifted your mood. So one of the main trends seen in people with major depressive disorder is that they will stop doing a lot of the activities that give them joy, things like hobbies, socialization, and just things that are fun. Instead, doing things that require minimal effort, like staying in bed, wasting time on the phone or computer, etc. And also just ruminating on negative thoughts. So withdrawing from enjoyable activities and doing things that are much less enjoyable is an example of behavior negatively impacting mood. Activity scheduling is a tool to improve mood by improving behavior. It's a pretty simple concept. You basically have a chart that looks like this. You can create your own, it doesn't really matter, but the idea is that you schedule activities for your day, hour by hour, and these activities can include things like self-care, activities that give you a sense of mastery, joy, and/or connection. And the point of this is that performing these activities will improve your mood and even your thinking later on, and take you out of this vicious cycle of having a bad mood, staying inactive, and thinking negative thoughts, which puts you in a worse mood, and so on. Instead, by engaging in activities and giving yourself credit for your activity, this might result in a more positive cycle where you get active, think positive thoughts, and then increase hopefulness for the future. That's the basic concept of activity scheduling, but a huge part of activity scheduling is figuring out how to properly schedule the activities and also how to overcome the many obstacles you might have that prevents you from engaging in activities, so that's what I'll cover next. First of all, how do you even figure out how to plan your day? Well, first, you can start by listing what you typically do on most days. This can help you figure out things you actually do that you like and don't like. Then on another list things that you actually do or things that you want to do that put you in a good mood or give you a sense of joy or accomplishment. On a separate column, you can list things that you're doing that are making your life worse. Here's an example of what that looks like from the textbook. When planning a day, you typically want to do more of the good, less of the bad. To break things down and examine how they impact your mood, you can analyze specific things that you do. So let's take watching excessive amounts of YouTube videos, for example. You can ask yourself, how do I feel after I watch YouTube for 5 hours straight? Well, my mood is usually pretty bad afterwards. How do I feel after taking a walk? Well, I feel significantly better. So I should schedule a walk every day and cut down on time watching YouTube. When you break things down into parts like that, it can seem really simple. Another way to think about behaviors is as if they were experiments, by considering the likelihood of outcomes for the experiment based on previous data. For example, when you find yourself watching or wanting to watch a ton of YouTube or TV instead of going for a walk, you can think, well, I tried this experiment of watching TV for like 5 hours many times, and it usually leaves me in a bad mood. So I should try walking instead, since I know it has in the past left me in a better mood, and even if it isn't always as good, it will probably still be better than TV. If you've performed a behavior many times in the past and it has had the same outcome, it's probably going to have the same outcome if you do it again, assuming nothing major has changed. It's not going to suddenly have a different outcome. I'll talk more on dealing with obstacles like this later on. You usually want to have some balance of activities that include activities that are pleasurable, involve self-care, socialization, or give you a sense of mastery. Self-care includes things like exercise, eating healthy, and hygiene. Activities increasing your sense of mastery include anything that make you feel competence or improvement by demonstrating and or developing some skill. Some more questions you could ask yourself when planning activities are, which activities am I doing too much of? Which am I doing too little of or avoiding entirely? What can I do to give myself positive emotions, connections, and a sense of control or competence? What can I do to help me draw positive conclusions, especially about myself? And what activities am I actually likely to do? For some people, rating the satisfaction you get from behaviors you perform throughout the day right after you perform them might help you decide what to do later or think more accurately about what behaviors will worsen or improve your mood. These ratings can tell you later which activities you might want to decrease and which you might want to increase to improve your mood. Also, you might not remember accurately which activities really did improve your mood, or you might have a more negative recollection of activities that actually did improve your mood more than you remember. You can also predict ratings for activities before you do them, and then compare that prediction to the rating you give the behavior right after performing it. And you can rate satisfaction in terms of how much pleasure the activity gave you, the sense of mastery you gained. There's two reasons for predicting ratings. First, if you're depressed or struggle with bad moods, your predictions of satisfaction from certain behaviors might be more negative than what you actually experience. By making the comparison of predicted and actual satisfaction, this data can help you modify your thinking, because you now have evidence to show yourself that even when you predicted a not so satisfactory outcome, the actual outcome is more satisfactory than you predicted. And you can use this when you find yourself stuck in bed or feeling too tired or like nothing will feel good. And you can use this to remind yourself that you should do an activity you previously enjoyed even if you don't predict it at the moment to be enjoyable. Because the evidence you've collected shows that it will probably improve your mood even if you don't predict at that moment that it will. The second reason to predict ratings is if you are predicting very low ratings and actually experiencing levels of satisfaction that are very low or even lower than what you predict. That could indicate a problem worth exploring. For example, are there any thoughts you're experiencing while performing the activity that are hindering your ability to enjoy it or gain positive feelings from it? If so, that is something that needs to be addressed. Giving ratings to behaviors isn't really for everyone though, so it's not something you necessarily have to do, especially if you struggle a lot with it. Another few things to remember when scheduling activities is to not plan things that are beyond your capability, or things that you don't feel like you can do, or things that are beyond your control. Scheduling things and then failing to do them can lead to an increased sense of incompetence or hopelessness, especially if you already have issues dealing with those types of thoughts. So for example, if you rarely get exercise, you don't have to schedule like an hour-long walk every day. You can keep it short, like a 5 or 10-minute walk, and work your way up gradually. Also, if you feel that it's too difficult to commit to something specific, like a specific hobby or interest, remember that early on, you don't need to commit to something like that, which would be too difficult. You can try to just get more active in general, like getting out of bed and doing things like walking outside for a few minutes. Also, when facing a problem or a goal that seems too difficult and intimidating, it's generally a good idea to break them down into smaller problems and goals, and then figure out tasks that you can do to solve that problem or achieve that smaller goal. So to make things more manageable, you can break down larger tasks into smaller ones. You may feel that you're more capable of doing these smaller tasks. It's good to have realistic expectations about how you'll perform. You can't expect to be mostly inactive for months and then just be super active every hour of the day the next day. Now I want to move on to obstacles, because this is a huge aspect of CBT. You are almost certainly going to find yourself facing thought processes and their connected emotions that hinder you from initiating activities, interfere with your enjoyment of the activities while you're doing it, or that create a distorted negative perception of an activity after you do it. These are all very common thought processes associated with depression. A lot of these interfering thoughts are called automatic thoughts. Identifying and altering automatic thoughts are a huge focus of CBT, so this is also an important process in behavioral activation. Automatic thoughts are instantaneous thoughts that are usually habitual, and they can affect your mood and actions. So when you're in a bad mood, you think about starting an activity, and some automatic thoughts might be, I'm too tired, I won't enjoy it, I won't be able to do it, nothing can help me feel better. And these thoughts can lead to more negative emotional reactions like sadness or hopelessness, which promote inactivity. It's really important to recognize when you're having these automatic thoughts, and instead of just letting them make you feel bad, consciously analyze and challenge them. The first part of this process, just recognizing automatic thoughts, can be difficult and requires practice. Many people find it easier to identify emotions directly rather than directly identifying thoughts. So a common way to identify automatic thoughts is by recognizing the emotions that follow them, and then asking yourself what you were just thinking about when these emotions occurred. So for instance, if you suddenly feel sad or anxious, you would acknowledge the emotion and then ask yourself what just went through your head at that moment to identify the automatic thoughts that caused the emotions of sadness or anxiety. After detecting a negative automatic thought, consider the soundness or accuracy of the thought. For example, consider this scenario. You're depressed and you're in bed and you feel sad and think, I'm too tired to do anything. And then you conclude that you're better off just staying in bed. This will probably feed into this negative cycle where the act of staying in bed further worsens or sustains your bad mood and so on. But now think about the automatic thought, I'm too tired. How true is this thought? Does it apply to every activity you could think of doing, or do you think that there is indeed something you might be able to do even if you are tired that will make you feel better even though doing that thing might be difficult? For instance, you could go for a walk if you like going on walks. If you don't like walking, you can think of some other example. But anyways, consider the outcome of the two decisions you can make here. You've done this experiment of staying in bed many times before, and most of the times, the outcome has been your mood staying low or getting worse. If you try this other experiment of, say, going on a walk, this is likelier to improve your mood, or at least it's probably not going to make it worse, so it's worth a try, or you should do it despite it being difficult. Keeping the broader goals and rationale of behavioral activation in mind can also help with the reasoning process. Why should you do something you're more likely to enjoy even though it's difficult? Because it's more likely to improve your mood in the short term, and it gives you a sense of control and engagement in your life, which are shown to improve overall mood gradually. So to recap that example, first, you identify an automatic thought, then you analyze and challenge it in two ways, by asking yourself how true the thought is, and then by considering how likely the outcomes of the behaviors are based on previous experience. Through these challenges, you developed an altered version of the automatic thought. I'm tired, but I can perform this behavior even if I'm tired, and I should do it because it's better than the behavior I'm currently performing, and it will help me achieve control and a better mood in the future. Then you choose your behavior based on the better modified thought process. This is a very different development from what may have happened if you just experienced the automatic thought and let it worsen your mood. Automatic thoughts can also interfere with your ability to enjoy an activity. For example, while doing something, you might have thoughts like, there's no point in doing this, I'm doing a terrible job, I should have done this long ago, there's still so much left to do, I can't do this as well as I used to, this used to be more fun, I don't deserve to be doing this. These thoughts can make you feel negative emotions like anger at yourself, sadness, anxiety, and guilt. These thoughts and the associated emotions can make the activity less enjoyable and make you stop or fail to repeat the activity. So again, it's important to identify them, then analyze and challenge them and modify them if they are negatively impacting you. Since there's so much to talk about regarding automatic thoughts and how to deal with them, I think I'll maybe make a separate video on them. But here I just want to emphasize that automatic thoughts can occur when you're performing the behaviors you plan and get in the way of your enjoyment of those behaviors and how much you want to do them in the future. So it's important to be on the lookout for these thoughts and deal with them properly. Okay, so after you've performed the activity you scheduled, it's important to give yourself credit for doing it. If you've managed to perform an activity despite it feeling difficult, what does this mean? It means that you can do things even when they're difficult. To an extent, you can take control of your mood, and you can, as you've proven by doing the action, you can take small steps to improve your life. So I want to mention that behavioral activation isn't magic. Some people need to stay active for some time and get to a high enough level of activity to see noticeable changes, but getting more engaged in life has high chances of improving mood. The last thing I want to mention is the use of coping cards. Coping cards are just these short statements you write for yourself, either physically or digitally, to look at in certain situations. They are useful in a variety of contexts, including behavioral activation. So these statements can be anything you feel is useful to remember for dealing with certain situations or thoughts. So here are a few examples. I find this pretty useful because it's sometimes hard to remember these useful pieces of information, so it's good to store them somehow. I also find that looking at these statements a few times and thinking about them can help you better remember them as well. Then when you need to remember them, you can recall them really easily and then use that information to manage your moods and thoughts. Now I'll end this video with a slightly modified version of some good advice from this textbook. It is important to act according to your values, what's really important to you, instead of just doing what you feel like doing when that goes against your values, because when you're in a bad mood, you'll feel like avoiding and not engaging in life. So act according to your values and try your best.